I will say this as well. There's going to be an added bonus to this first workshop for those who are getting antsy about doing all that other more technical stuff. At the very end of this workshop, I'm going to reveal to you the secret of writing. Well, hello everyone. Yes, indeed, I am Chris Humphreys, otherwise known as CC Humphreys. We were going to do this in front of a live audience, which is always my desire and passion, because as some of you may know, I'm an actor as well. So, and I've missed the live audience experience. However, I mean, it does have some advantages because, for a start, I can carry on wearing swimming trunks, and you will never know. Unless I stand up and look around, and then you will. Anyway, I am very excited to start the 8-part series called The Mountain. The teaching of techniques that I have learned over the years. The method, really, by which someone like myself, who had dreamed for years of writing novels, finally did. And that's how I began. So over the years, I've refined this way of doing things until it's become second nature, but I'm hoping to make it first nature for you, perhaps. One of the guiding principles of my life is the word simplify. I try to simplify as much of my life as possible, and this applies particularly to writing. Writing has infinite complications and complexities, all of which are very exciting to tackle. But my whole theory of writing, and there are a lot of theories out there, is to simplify everything as much as possible. So when we talk about using this metaphor, which I will keep coming back to, climbing the mountain, it's really not about thinking of that summit, but thinking, which the summit being the end of the novel or the first draft. What you're thinking about, at least initially, is just getting off the ground, looking up and seeing that little finger hold there and going, oh, I'm off the ground. I've started this particular journey. And that way of moving, and I'm going to explain how we move between these little crevasses and toe holes and finger holes to get to the top, is what I'm going to really be talking about. And once we've got to the top and have written the end on the first draft, there's another series of ways of climbing the mountain for the second ascent, what the second draft entails, that second climb. And also we'll do the same thing for the third climb. So that's what we're going to be doing, these 8 masterclasses. And over the coming weeks, I'm going to equip you with all the tools you'll need. I'll deal with structure, point of view, dialogue, research, and how to use it. All these things and more, everything you'll need. But the one word you'll hear, which Daniel's already mentioned once, is the word process or process. I probably prefer to say process, but I do hail from the other side of the pond. Process, because writing is a process. It's a series of stages leading to an end result, which is a finished novel, a short story, a play, a screenplay, a poem, whatever it is. And I think what stops a lot of people writing, who have that dream, like I had before I began, of writing, is not understanding that it is a process. They think that they have to be good straight away. They must have some sort of innate talent. And when they look at their first attempts and think, well, it's not like my heroes, right? They despair. Obviously, they haven't been given the writing gene. Now, I'm going to dispel that myth along with many other myths. I would also say that the term I try never to use, that I actively dislike, is aspiring writer, because you're here. You are not aspiring to anything. You are a writer. And I want to reinforce that. How to become a better writer is the only thing we're going to be doing here over the course of these classes. During the writing of my first class, of my first draft rather, during that first ascent of the mountain. One of the things I do straight away is get rid of the words good and bad. In fact, I don't actually often use them later on even, because a piece of writing either works or it doesn't work. This chapter, this paragraph, this sentence, even this word, what does it work? Is it useful in the context? Does it convey what you want it to convey? Has it fulfilled your intention? That should be the only consideration. So I'm going to encourage you all, when you're starting something, to just take that word good and the other word bad out of your vocabulary. Now, Daniel mentioned that I've been a writer for a while now. I've actually written 22 novels. 21 have been published and 22 is in the final stages of copy editing and all that stuff. It'll be published next year. And I've written in a variety of genres, adult and young adult. Why is it adult and young adult? Anyway, I never knew I understood that. Adult and young adult, historical, crime, thrillers, and fantasy. I am the fantasy writer in residence at VPL. I've also written 4 plays, some short stories, some screenplays, and the odd poem, which will truly never see the light of day. And that's in 20 years of writing. Because before that time, I was an actor, yes, but I was also a dreamer. I wanted to be a writer. And I just did not understand that word, which is going to crop up again and again, and I might get you all to yell it when I do, process. I figured out how to climb the mountain, and over the years, I have refined that process, which is why I'm able to share it with you now. I actually never really considered myself to be a teacher for the longest time, but then someone asked me to teach a class, and I actually had to figure it out, what it is that I do. And that was a gift to me, because it helped me in my own writing, sort of nailing down what my process is. And so I'm hoping that what I share will help you in yours. I'm very grateful to the Vancouver Public Library for giving me this opportunity, by the way. Now, I should also point out that the things I say are not going to land with everyone all the time. This is my process to simplify things. I think that if something is true, it's true for a lot of people, but it might not be absolutely true for you. Everyone is going to have their own. There are as many theories of writing, really, as there are writers. Yeah, I mean, you've seen all the writing manuals out there, right? Every author seems to come out with on writing at some stage. Maybe I will at the end of all these classes. But my theory works for me, and because it's about ruthlessly separating out the different stages of the process, acknowledging that the first draft will have very different priorities to the subsequent drafts. I'm able to climb that mountain and move through from first idea to someone buying it in a shop. So what I'm going to talk about initially is inspiration. And ideas, really, how to find them, how to develop them. And many other writers will be much more controlled than I am at the very beginning. They will need to know everything, know their exact route, perhaps, have planned their whole route before they start climbing that mountain. I need to know very little. I have an idea, which is an image, a fact, a character I want to write about, and I begin and develop the first draft from that small step, that first reach, that first finger hold up that mountain that it seems so daunting because the summit's so far up there. But this, I'm off the ground. Now, for me, and I know, by the way, I should say there's a lot of people out there I know will already have their manuscripts in much further stages of development from this initial idea. But I thought I'd go back to basics, and then rest assured, partly in this talk, but certainly in the talks to come, in the other classes I'll be teaching, you're going to get all that stuff that you feel you need about character, about plot, about structure, about everything. But let's stick with ideas. And For me, it starts with chaos. If we are to believe the physicists, that's where we all began, right? It began with chaos, the Big Bang, 13 billion years ago or something. And the German philosopher Nietzsche, who's controversial but amazing ideas. And one of the things he said, which really sat with me for a long time, was one must have chaos within who would give birth to a dancing star. So that's what I'm aiming to do each time I start a book. From the chaos, some form will come. And so if we actually consider going through, searching through the cosmos for that first idea, I will say this as well. There's going to be an added bonus to this first workshop for those who are getting antsy about doing all that other more technical stuff. At the very end of this workshop, I'm going to reveal to you the secret of writing. Yep, no, you're going to hear it here first. The secret of writing. There is a secret, and I'm going to reveal it to you, but not till the end. So if you get bored or anything, go off and make a cup of tea. Make sure you're back at around 4:30 because the secret of writing will be revealed. Right, let's begin. How do you find the idea? How do you nurture that idea once you've found it? And new ideas come in all sorts of ways. Sometimes, and I'm sure you've all experienced this. Sometimes it's a flash. Sometimes it's something someone says, something you've read, a blog piece, a history book, just a magazine, something will stimulate an idea for you. I'm going to tell you a couple of my, what I call origin stories of two of my books, just to give you a sort of an idea of two very different ways of approaching it. The first one I'm going to talk about is my novel Plague, which is effectively it's a religious fundamentalist serial killer story set during the Great Plague of London in 1665. And Plague began in this way. I was chatting with my agent who was in London, and I was lying on my bed in Salt Spring Island, and we were talking about possibly moving publishers. I was with Hachette for many years, and we were thinking of moving to Penguin Random House because some of the publishers there had decided they really wanted me to be on their books. But we had to come up with an idea, and I don't know, I'm not usually bereft of ideas, but we were struggling with an idea. So there's my agent lying on his bed in London, and he's saying to me, "Oh, Chris, books are just so amazing. I mean, we love the feel of them, the smell of them, don't we? The covers." He said, "I can imagine walking into W.H. Smith & Son booksellers in Charing Cross Station and seeing all these books that are red and black and have the word plague across them." And I went, "What? Just a second here. Are you talking about the Great Plague of London?" He went, "Well, yes, an example of books that are red and black." And I went, "Okay, just give me a moment here." And I went off to my hut where I used to write, and I sat down and I wrote the word plague on a piece of paper. And the door behind me bangs open, and this man walks in. He's got long, black, grey streaked hair, and he's wearing, obviously, a 17th century costume. And he walks in, he looks at me, and he says, "My name is Captain Coke. I'm a highwayman. You should put me in your book." And I went, "Yep, you're in. Okay, good. Captain Coke, highwayman. Interesting." Then he leaves and the door bangs open again and someone else comes in, and it's this very big man, bald head, beard. And he says, "My name is Pitman. I'm a thief taker." And I thought, we have a thief taker. You're in. And it's slightly scary, but you're still in. And then the door opens again and this woman walks in and she says, "My name is Sarah Chalker. I'm an actress and my husband's gone missing." That was it. And I suppose the takeaway from that is that I just let it happen. I didn't know when I sat down, and I often don't know when I sit down, what exactly is going to happen. But trusting the process, and this stage of the process is all about letting the imagination go. There's techniques when you write it down, I'm going to show you one in a second, of how you actually start to draw those ideas down into that wonderful condensed form of energy called the word. But That's how that book began. Now, the second book I'll talk about by contrast was, though it involved an agent again. Agents, wonderful people, can be. Was my book Smoke in the Glass, which is the first book of the trilogy, which I'm just completing, called the Immortal's Blood trilogy. And my then agent said to me, because I'd been writing a lot of historical fiction up to that point, having written a lot of fantasy earlier in my career. He said, have you thought of writing high epic fantasy? And I went, what do you mean? Do you mean sort of the R.R. writers like J.R.R. Tolkien and George R.R. Martin, and I could be C.C.R.R. Humphreys, I suppose. I'll write a high epic fantasy, something like that. He said, yeah, something like that. So I went, well, okay. And I went and sat down. And it's no reason at all, I wrote this. I'm going to do it live for you here. I wrote on a piece of paper, let's see if I've spelt it right. I think I have. There it is. Can anyone see that? It says immortality. Immortality. I don't know why. I was suddenly interested in immortality. I then just riffed on that. Actually, what I did, and this is a technique, it would really require an extra class to go over it entirely, but I did a circle around it and I started doing word association. Immortality, aged. Oh, my pen's not working. Aged, there's a circle there. And then aged, whiskey was here. And I just started writing different things. And after a few minutes of just free associating with the word immortality, I had the beginnings of a plot. Actually, 3 hours later, I had a 5-page treatment, but that's just showing off, I suppose. And I sent it to him and he liked it and we developed it from there. But it was another example of ideas being taken and then just expanded upon, the beginning of the process, the first finger hold pull off the ground, heading to the summit. Now, I'd like to say a couple of things here about just going back on how we approach writing. People get put off easily by that idea of good and bad. And for nearly all of us, we are often joined by critics who will criticize in the worst sense of the word, because criticism itself is not a negative thing, it's useful. And it will become useful on subsequent climbs up that mountain. But criticism, critics, we think, we start writing something and it's almost like they come in and grab our hand and say, well, that's not very nice. What if your mother read that? Would you like your mother to know that that's how you think? And you think, oh, no, I better scratch it out then for mum. Or anything, or this not very well spelled, the grammar sucks. I mean, all these different things. So my suggestion, and I used this quite a lot in my first 2 novels anyway, until I started doing it more in my head, I actually would open up my notebook, and at the back of the notebook, I would write critics page. And any time a critic said something to me, it popped up, oh, your mother wouldn't like it, it's bad, badly spelled, blah, blah, blah. I'd write it down. And as soon as you write it down, you realize, A, it's not true, B, who is this critic anyway? And C, good and bad don't apply. So you write it down and you sort of exorcise that demon. It's very, another rule that I have, particularly around this first climb up the mountain, about the first draft is, here's a first draft rule. Never show your first draft to anyone. Now, it's that can be tricky, especially if perhaps some of you are in writing groups, and there's a need to produce and then share and have people comment. I did that at UBC when I did my master's degree, and I have to say I didn't think it was the most effective form of studying creative writing, because we were largely studying people's first drafts. And the same thing applies to your own critic with other people. They might just not see. You get very excited, oh, I've got this idea here, have a look at this, what do you reckon? And they might not see the gem, the diamond that's sitting at this mountain of coal. All they'll see is the coal, right? So don't show anyone your first draft. It also gives you permission then to be rude, crude, badly spelled, poor grammatically, which is itself a poor grammatical sentence, all those things, because no one is going to see it. No one's going to see your first draft. And that will apply throughout the first draft, that first climb up the mountain. Now, the other thing about writing is that it's a practice. We hear the term often now in terms of all sorts of things, meditation or a practice. If you want to learn to play the piano, obviously you have to practice any musical instrument. Writing is equally a practice. There are no geniuses. I mean, even Mozart had to learn his scales first, right? So the practice of writing requires you to write. And we all have very busy lives. Many of us have families, we're trying to earn a living, remembering to bring your mask to the supermarket. I mean, all these things. And so if you're serious about writing, which I assume you all are, because why would you be here if you weren't? If you're serious about writing, you need to accept that it's a practice and perhaps a calling, and you need to make time to do it. Ideally, in an ideal world, you make the same time every day, and perhaps even a space which is yours. I'm a morning writer. I like to wake up, make myself a vat of coffee, actually, grab a piece of toast, sit down and be writing by 7 a.m. if I can be. But you might not have that luxury. I mean, I write for a living now, so I tend to have that luxury. But if you are writing part-time, which most of you I suspect will be, then make that space. Don't think, I'll write when I get to it. I'll write when I get home from work when you're tired. I'll write at midnight when you'd rather be sleeping. Maybe you are a midnight writer. My friend, sounds like a name drop here, but my friend Diana Gabaldon has this outrageous schedule that she developed from when she had young children. She would put them to bed. She would write from 10 till 1 in the morning. She would go to sleep for 3 hours, and then she'd get up at 4 and write again. I mean, it's madness to me, but look at her output. For me, get up and write. Now, if you can only manage half an hour, get up half an hour before the kids. Get up half an hour before you normally would. If you put in half an hour a day and write a page a day in a year, that's a novel. That's your first novel. A space is good as well. I mean, obviously, a desk, a corner of your kitchen table, a booth in a cafe. It's kind of nice to control the things you can control. Is again one of my simplification quests in life, and controlling that amount, it's amazing what it can do to the mentality. To think, right, this is the place I write, this is the time I write. Now, you have the idea. You've written down a key word, you've clustered it, you've mused, you've thought about it. Where do you take it from there? Again, I said at the beginning of this that many writers, all writers, basically have their own theory of writing. Now, the other day, I interviewed the author Evan Winter for Vancouver Public Library, and he's a wonderful fantasy writer. He's written this very successful series which begins with The Rage of Dragons. We discuss process. His is to pre-write everything. He's what they call a plotter, but boy is he a plotter. He said that he writes effectively 250-page outlines before he starts writing the book, and then there are no surprises for him. He writes. Now, it works for him. Remember I said that's the key thing, whatever works. I would find that incredibly boring. Partly because of the secret of writing, which I'm still going to reveal to you later on. Don't tune out. And for me, it would be like going on a journey where you know everything that's going to happen. You've already Google mapped the hell out of it. You've visited every bar in Expedia or whatever. It's to me that's not exciting. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't know anything when I set out. I don't want to be. There are writers who literally do not know anything. I'm going to talk about how much I know, how much I need to know before I start. And a lot of it's going to come down to the character you're writing about. Now, I don't know if everyone out there is a fiction writer. Perhaps some of you are in fiction in whatever form. It could be a screenplay or a play, or if some of you are actually thinking of a memoir or stuff like that. But in the end, what makes a reader turn the page, the number one thing that makes a reader turn a page, I think, is an investment in a character. And probably next week, I'm going to devote a lot of the class to character in action, basically. There's a little hyphen between those because character in action would be a really dull book. Character in action. And we're going to do all that next week. And I have some tricks of the trade for that. But if you start with a character, you want to get to know them. To assume you know your character straight away, unless you're Evan Winter, I think it's like assuming this person you just met on the street. You're going to know them straight away. It's getting to know them through action, through what they do, what they say, how they reveal themselves. And that's part of my technique for writing the novel, because the character is going to tell me what the story is. I hope that doesn't sound too esoteric, because I don't think it's esoteric at all. And when we delve into character next week, you will discover that. I've got a couple of favorite words to do with writing. One of them is oscillation, and that sense of moving back and forth between things. When you're writing your novel, on every draft of your novel, you're oscillating between character, the character's needs, the plot, the structure, oscillating between character and plot, between plot and research, between research and structure. All these things you're oscillating between. Now, if you can trust that your brain is going to do that, because the brain is actually quite clever. It's a useful thing to have. You can allow it to go between those different things. So it's never simply one thing. It's the brain is oscillating. And because of the secret of writing, I'm teasing now, aren't I? Which I will reveal later, you will you'll recognize that, how the different things are. Now, the second word I like, and then it's also it's another metaphor. I'm going to mix my metaphors a bit here, because we've had the mountain, and now we're going to get the alphabet. The story that you are writing, I liken to an alphabet. 26 letters in English. When I set out to climb that mountain, mixing my metaphors, when I set out, I know I know where I'm beginning. I know how I'm getting off the ground to that finger hole. But that's probably, I know I can at least start there. The character, Captain Coke, the highwayman at a crossroads, about to do a robbery. The immortal that begins smoking the glass, who doesn't know he's immortal, because immortality is a secret in the blood, and you only discover it when you're killed. He's a soldier, a kidnapper. He's trying to rescue these kidnapped children, puts an arrow through his eye. He dies. He wakes up. He's immortal. So that would be A in my book. Now I might know D. D might be in that fantasy book in the Viking-like world, where the immortals there, the very few immortals there, are called gods in the way that sort of Viking gods tended to mix with humanity a lot. And I know that he's going to discover that someone is killing the gods when he catches a black-eyed, black-toothed assassin. I kind of knew that. But that's D. How I get from A to D, B and C, not sure. That's going to happen through the characters. That's going to allow them to breathe. And so on. I might know M, T, Y. What I don't know necessarily is the route between them. But because of the secret of writing, God, that's probably getting really annoying. Anyway, because of the secret of writing, you're going to figure out how to do that. The last thing to say about that really is Z, or if there's anyone joining in from America here, Z. I sometimes think I know Z. And in fact, I usually do. That's going to be the summit. Z, again, mixing the metaphors, Z is at the summit up there, the top of the mountain, which you're trying to get to. I will often know it, and it is the thing that most changes all the way through. So that is the plan. That is how I climb the mountain. And by joining the letters up, I've completed the alphabet. Again, I would just reiterate those rules that I set out with. The rules being, it doesn't have to be good, it doesn't have to be bad, it only has to be the story. The story is telling you the story. So the characters are telling you the story. Their needs are dictating the story to a certain extent. And by focusing on that, by following them and pursuing their objectives and their clashes, as I say, I'm going to deal with character a lot in subsequent episodes, but by following that, the story starts to get dictated. Now, I'd like to, rather than me ranting on much more here for a moment, I'd like to take a little pause and see if there are any questions out there. I've got two questions here, both of which are quite interesting. How has your experience as an actor influenced your writing? From Anne Lipton. It's actually a very good question. It's very pertinent to what we're talking about, because as an actor, a lot of my writing comes from almost acting 101. It's one of the things you're taught at drama school, and one of the things you use always, whether it's on film or in a play, is when the camera's about to turn over, or when you're about to walk on the stage, that the big question, well, there's all these questions: who, what, when, why, where, but the biggest question is, what do I want? And how am I going to get it? This is revealing slightly what I'm going to, as I say, teasingly expand on next week about character. But I had this little catchphrase called COMOCA, which is COMOCA, and that's characters, objectives. Meeting obstacles creates action. It's a sneak preview of what we'll be talking about next week. Characters, objectives, meeting obstacles create action. And I will save it because I'm not going to go into it, but it's probably almost self-explanatory. And what they want, what gets in the way of getting it, and what that then creates is the way I write. Someone else Karen said to me, how do you make sure your character wants something big enough for a novel? It's a very good question. I'm hesitant to answer it directly because, or in a prescriptive manner, because I think you don't necessarily know what your character wants straight away because you don't know who your character is. If you've set up a situation, such as Captain Coke, the highwayman, who is suffering from whatever the 17th century equivalent of PTSD is, because like all the characters, all the male characters, particularly in this novel, have all fought in the ghastly English Civil War, and it's affected them in different ways. He doesn't know what to do, apart from he's quite well bred, but as he said at one point in the book, his only education was in black powder and blades. He doesn't know anything else how to do, what to do. So that in itself began a question for me. And you'll hear this said before, and I think it's very true. There's what a character wants and what he needs, or she, or they, or it. Because I've written about dragons as well, and they need lots of different things, mainly a lot of food. But yes, so I think the answer to that is, again, looking at process, separate it out, and ask yourself that question later on. I suppose there's a few other things I want to say about this first climb, because as I said before, several of you will already have drafts written, all sorts of things when you haven't done exactly this because you're hearing it for the first time, though I suspect it will have struck a chord with several of you. What I'm saying is I didn't reinvent the wheel here. The wheel was already there. It's how you push it. Oh, I've got another metaphor now. This is terrible. The wheel, the alphabet, and the mountain. A series of broadcasts. But for those who are, maybe I should address that. For those who are already in their different stages of preparation, we're going to talk about second drafts and third drafts in subsequent workshops. But what might be useful for you now is to go back and it's a bit of a second draft stuff, but to go back and consider, or maybe you're halfway through a draft or something like that, maybe go back and consider that character aspect again. What is it that the character really wants, and what has got in their way, and whether the action has illustrated that or not. So that's one thing there. The other thing, for those who are literally starting out, I think it's hard to get yourself in the mindset of just allowing stuff to happen. We like to control things. It's a very human tendency. And I'm not being all sort of wishy-washy, airy-fairy here about things. There's a very practical, solid side to writing as well. But what I keep harping on about is that idea of, yes, you could all shout the word if you're available, process. Separating out the different stages of the process is the key to it for me. Not muddying the first draft waters with the third draft waters. Oh my God, I've got another metaphor. Oh, okay. Not doing that, not knowing that each draft has its own imperative, its own needs. When we get into second drafts and third drafts and all subsequent revisions, then we'll talk about what their imperatives are. But there's another golden rule, which I've nearly forgotten to tell you, about the first draft, in the Humphreys technique anyway. And it's back to climbing the mountain. And it's a rule of mountaineers. I'm not a mountaineer, so maybe if anyone is a mountaineer out there, I apologize. My technical language is probably poor, but this to me is quite clear. I know this from climbing trees, even, which I used to do quite a lot of until I fell out of one. Don't look down. Don't look down. So what I do, I barely read back during my first draft. I might, settle down in the morning with my vat of coffee and read back the couple of pages before just to see where I was at, especially if I've stopped mid-chapter. But mostly, I don't look down. I keep climbing, which is very interesting because when I get to the summit, and a first draft really depends on the book, but a first draft takes anywhere between 4 months to 7 months, perhaps. It's very interesting to read back some of the stuff I wrote. As we'll discover about second drafts, when you're sitting on top of that mountain looking down and seeing the route you took, that's the way you'll be able to say, aha, there's that and that and that. But if you do it while you're climbing, you're actually going to shut off all these avenues that you could have taken. You're going to not there will be developments that you might, because you're starting to correct. There's an old Buddhist saying, first thought, best thought. First thought, best thought. And that's often true. So if I can encourage you to do that. Now there's and it's partly because you've taken the words good and bad out of your vocabulary, right? If I can encourage you to not look down, to keep going up, that is this stage of the process. Because once you've got a first draft done, the world changes. If those of you out there who've never finished a first draft, trust me, it is a complete game changer, because I've written a book. I mean, it's not good or bad because I'm not even thinking about that, but I've actually finished something. And then the next stage of the process begins, which is actually my favorite stage of the process. There's that wonderful, those wonderful sculptures in Florence, which I suspect some of you have seen, leading up to David. Michelangelo's, they're called the prisoners actually, because they are blocks of marble that are in various stages of development, much like writers. And Michelangelo has sort of worked away at some, and so you can see a shape emerging. And he's maybe seen, because he always said the shape was there, I just had to cut away, wasn't the shape. So he's cut away and you can see a perfect jawline or a shoulder. But the rest of it is just this rough rock. And that to me is a great metaphor for any artistic process, but the writing process. You're going to have this rough rock, which you've started to cut away the bits at, chisel away, and slough off what isn't the story, what isn't your book, screenplay, short story, whatever it is, play. And to me, that is, as I say, another metaphor, but this time a metaphor for artistic process. If you haven't seen it, if you've never been fortunate enough to go to Florence and see it live, look them up, because they are extraordinary. So I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing we're getting close. So what do you think? Is it time to reveal the secret? I will have to explain the secret slightly afterwards, though it is fairly self-explanatory. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to turn this without trying not to turn off my computer, because there's my board. Yes, I can go over here and do this. The secret is about to appear on the board behind me. But of course, I'm going to block you from seeing it until I've written it up. Okay. Can you see that? Oh, it's a bit low, isn't it? Let's see if I can put it up a bit more. Can you see that? Writing is... Dun dun. Someone's drum rolling, I hope. You ready? Writing is writing. Ta-da! I mean, it's a shock, isn't it? It's a shock to the system to understand something like that. Writing is writing. Now, I know some of you are thinking, right, well, I mean, I'm going to turn off now. I'm not going to come back because that is ridiculous. But it's a phrase I said to a quite well-known New York agent. He and I were both teaching at the Surrey Writers' Conference, which I urge some of you to check out because it's a great place for writers starting out on the journey, particularly to go and get lots of help and support. I was sitting at the bar with this agent. His name was Don Mass. I might as well quote his name. Very successful agent. He was living in New York at the time. And he told me that he was heading, it was the end of the conference, he was heading back to New York. He was really looking forward to the flight. And because he's also a novelist, that's how he got into the whole publishing business. And he said, I'm really looking forward because I finally get a chance to know he can contact me. This is sort of pre-cell phones on planes. Knowing I can just write. I can write again, but because it's this little time, I'm not sure, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And I said, well, you know what I say, Don? I say, writing is writing. And he spat beer for a moment and said, what? I said, it's not thinking about writing. It's not planning to write. The thing that happens in the moment is the writing. So you can have planned out all these wonderful things. You can have had all these wonderful thoughts, which is why I don't subscribe to the Evan Winter principle, even though it works so well for him. I like to surprise myself. I like my brain to do what it does, which is to take this moment and find the next moment and produce the character I need because of the oscillation that's happening between plot and character and structure and all that. Most days I will start with my blank page, having read maybe the previous 2 paragraphs or something to know where I am. I have an idea where I need my character to go. What does he want is the question. And yesterday I'm writing a World War II novel right now. Part of my gig here at VPL is they sponsor me to write half the time, which is fantastic. And I needed my pilot character, one of 2 protagonists. It's about a fighter pilot and a spy, loosely based on my parents' story. I needed this fighter pilot to join a new squadron. He was reporting to the new commander. Now, I had no idea who this commander was going to be. I'd thought I might have him be a very snooty sort of English, wing commander type. Oh, yes, and which is the sort of character my main character hates, because he's actually an anarchist and had fought in Spain and all this. But he didn't work out like that. The character was not that. I just started writing, and this guy, I didn't have a name before I started. I thought it was going to be Douglas MacRae, and I thought Dougal's nicer, and he's a Scot. And instead of being this snooty upper class type, he's actually, his father was a convener for the Scottish Dockyards Union and a card-carrying member of the Communist Party since he was 14 years old. None of that I knew sitting down, because writing is writing. So you now know the secret, and I hope that was worth tuning in for. What I've done today is obviously give you a taster and more a sort of philosophical approach to writing. As I said right at the top of all this, I am going to delve into lots of practicalities over the subsequent 7 classes. And we will deal primarily with character in action, that kamoka I talked about next week, but also how we use that to climb the mountain, how we use that to fill in the gaps in the alphabet. So, unless someone has another pressing question for me, which I'd love to tackle, hang on, there's the chat again. And you could always, if you wanted to, if you have a question, you could always unmute yourself and ask it rather than write it down in chat.
Chris, yes. Question for you. Did you find with your process of turning off your inner critic during your first draft that it made you more emotional while you were writing? i.e., did you write yourself to tears?
Ooh. On occasion, it's true. That's a very interesting question. I suppose it does leave you a bit more vulnerable, as one always is when one is out of control a bit, when one is accepting the chaos, which I talked about right at the beginning of this, that wonderful Nietzsche quote, which bears repeating: one must have chaos within who would give birth to a dancing star. A lot of people don't like chaos, and I don't like chaos in certain situations. But chaos in writing, accepting that it's it can be this chaotic thing, that from it worlds are going to collide and fall apart and come back together and go in parallel and form a solar system. I'm no more an astrophysicist than I am a climber. But did it make me emotional? Yes, it is. Again, it depends on the subject matter. Sacrifice makes me emotional. Someone giving up something for someone or something they believe in. This latest novel has been more emotional for me because it is kind of based on my parents. My dad was a fighter pilot and he departed this world a long time ago. And now, having done the research and reading what he must have gone through because of the experiences of the people who wrote about it, I just think, why isn't he around so I can ask him about this stuff? So then I got emotional. Yeah. So, good question. But yes, I mean, perhaps silencing the inner critic and allowing yourself to just be. It's one of my big words, which I will come back to in further courses. To be in writing, in life, can be emotional for sure. All right. Well, listen. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm looking at all the names. There are some people I know here. There's many people I don't know here. I'm so pleased you were able to join me today, and I'm really hoping you'll come again. As the 60s TV series said, same bat time, same bat channel, next Thursday at 3:30. We'll finish the first draft and we'll dive into character, how characters will dictate your action. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.